Okay, rendering armor, taking creative license for clarity, Ruthie Pigface Draper. My name is Eric Canetti. You're watching Redraw, and today I'm drawing Wonder Woman 1984. Hey, there you go. This is me doing thumbnails. Some people have asked me what makes me choose one thumbnail over another. You saw me go through maybe a half a dozen of them just a few seconds ago. I don't really have a good answer. Really, for me, it's just what feels good at that moment, and also if I haven't done that composition in a while, and I don't remember doing... I think there was one image in there that I was really going into, and I'd realized it's a 3/4 down shot. It was pretty dramatic, and it's 3-point perspective, and I just did that for the Bo-Katan video, and I didn't want to do that again. So I chose this upshot of the of Wonder Woman. And also, I realized that there was really great opportunity to use the wings as a compositional element to make everything pop forward or recede back. So yeah, that's where my brain was at on that. Things to note, I'm already starting to do the value structure here, paying attention to how much I want to push elements back, pull elements forward. I'm already starting to understand, or at least wrap my brain around the light hierarchy, and also starting to think about how to leverage the reflective properties of that armor, something I'll talk about later. Things like foreshortening and depth of field, those are the things that I'm kind of balancing out in my head. You know, how they're going to relate to each other, which one's going to be fighting for your attention, things like that. In this case, if you take a look at that leg in the foreground and the sword that's coming directly at camera, how do I push that back even though it's in the foreground so that the attention goes to the face of the character? Our natural tendency as an audience is to look for faces, so that's already working in my favor. But I do have to be mindful of how I render that foreshortened leg and that sword in value, so it doesn't accidentally flatten the depth of field of the shot. Interesting history of this Golden Eagle armor design. I think the first time that we've ever seen it in comic books was in Non-Continuity in an Elseworlds book, illustrated by Alex Ross, then brought into regular continuity by a lot of different artists. And it's fascinating for me to think about how it looks in the comics and how it gets translated into the live action. Those wings are pretty dang killer from the movie too. They kind of look like a row of switchblades. That's pretty sweet. You can see me start rendering that chest armor, and I was struggling through it a bit because I kept losing track of how the perspective would change the acute nature of how those seams worked. So I just kept rendering it as if I was looking at it straight on, and by doing that, all I did was accidentally flattening out the volume. The lines were informative by way of how they were on the armor, but they weren't very informative to the perspective. So all I did was put lines down, flatten out the perspective, put lines down, flatten out the perspective. So it was starting to get pretty frustrating. So the exercise then was to step back and eliminate some of those lines, or redesign how those seams would wrap around the volume of her chest area. Well, the good thing about that is that it really did help me focus on which lines were super important, which lines to keep, and the other ones were just sort of designy for designy's sake, and I edited those very quickly. I just caught myself actively thinking, don't say boobs. Don't say boob armor. Don't say boobs. I've said boobs 5 times now. You're welcome. Can I tell you how absolutely awful I am at social media? It's just that, oh wait a second, before I forget, thank you so much to everybody who commented, liked, and subscribed to my channel based on that first video. I really do appreciate you. But most importantly, I want to thank Alan, who's now helping me through editing and, if you can tell, the better sound quality, helping me through the sound of this new video. So thanks, Alan, and thanks everybody. Anyway, back to me being horrible at social media. So yeah, I don't know how to social media very well. I think some people will just have a natural propensity for social interaction. I think there are people who just know how to sort of get everybody into a, how do they term it? They call it a call to action. I think some people just know inherently how to inspire their audience to do that. I'm not that guy, so when it comes to YouTube, my I don't know how to social media is also really obvious in that space too. So it's funny because here I am trying to start up a YouTube channel, and when it comes to optimizing for getting more eyeballs and views on my videos, I don't have the first clue of how to make that work. So I've had a group of friends reach out to me and try to make my YouTube channel better, from thumbnails to even going as deep as putting the right title on so that the discoverability of it is so much better on the YouTube algorithm. All of those are awesome. Thank you. But I'm afraid I am not going to be very good at that either. Speaking of social media, if you like what you've seen so far, please leave a like, subscribe to my channel, and hit that notification bell so you know when my next videos go up. And if you want to say hello, use the comments box below. Cool, thanks. It's not enough to just kind of fake something through. I think it's important to understand how an element works. So at the very least, you'll know how to change it and alter it, augment it for the purposes of whatever you're using it for. In this case, when I looked up the reference for the shield and how straps work and how it worked historically, that was a good point of reference for me, but then I realized if I were to incorporate everything, it would get a little busy in that section. So I did just enough to have you understand how it's strapped onto the forearm and how she would have to hold on to it with her hand. But yeah, that was a big learning experience for me, because I guess I never really looked into how shields worked. I just assumed they get strapped onto your arm. Dummy. I had to take some creative license as to how that highlight would work on the upper chest armor there. If you think about it realistically, that highlight wouldn't be that hot, that contrasty, unless that light source was almost directly on top of that surface. But because I was using that as a compositional element to draw your eye to her face or to her head, and I use more of that highlight, that hot spot on the wings behind her later on to frame her head specifically, so that your attention goes there. Anyway, if you think about how light works, that highlight would run through the core of her abdomen and then ultimately near her thigh and in her leg. But because of that creative liberty, I decided to ramp down how hot that was for the rest of her armor and just isolate it to her head, again using it as a compositional element. This is an angle I like to lovingly refer to as the Ruthie Pigface Draper angle. The concept is that because of the upshot, we're going to have these flaring nostrils, and that's not a very attractive shot, so I have to be very, very careful not to overemphasize those nostrils. I got that term from a movie called Dan in Real Life with Steve Carell, and there's a scene where he's about to meet a girl that he hadn't seen since high school, or was it elementary, and apparently she wasn't that very attractive. The irony is when she walks in, it's the very beautiful Emily Blunt, and anyway, there's nothing pig-face about that woman at all. And now the unenviable task of rendering these wings. I should have looked up how these wings worked exactly by looking at the video, or looking at footage, looking at reference material online, but honestly, I think I would have been too caught up in trying to understand how the mechanism works when they start to spread. I distinctly remember it from the trailer that I saw for the movie. They start to spread and animate out, and I really didn't want to sort of get hung up on like how they interlink and how they fold out and so on, and that may seem contrary to what I said earlier about like understanding how a shield mechanism worked, but it was obvious to me that there is a lot of movie magic when it came to how these switchblade wings spread out. So yeah, I didn't look up reference. I just kind of started painting, and again, just using them as sort of a compositional element. And if you look in the far right there, there are little slats of light gray that really don't attach to anything, so it's more of an impression of how they work as opposed to the actuality. Okay, so I'm nearing the end, and it's time to sort of add the little final touches to call this thing all done. I'm adding little tiny highlights on, on the helmet, and then eventually on the sword. I go in and darken the shadow inside the helmet itself to really pop the little gleam in her eyes. There's this bit with the tail feathers that I'm still not convinced I'm going to keep for the final image, but I don't know if that broke up the really nice silhouette of her thigh. I may or may not keep it. I don't think I'll keep it. And then I put a shadow on the light side of the wings that she's casting onto them. What else? And then just a little bit of rim light on the receding leg to really help you identify that form. I added the glint on the sword, the gleam on the edge of the blade, and yeah, that's about as close as I can get to calling it done. So there you go. Second video, hopefully better than the first. I had a ton of fun. That was certainly less nerve-wracking than the first video, and also I tried to stay as on topic as possible. I don't know, did I stay on topic? Comment below. Don't forget to subscribe. Hit the notification bell so you know when my videos go up, and follow me in my social media under Eric Canetti. I'm at Twitter and on Instagram. And that's it. Thanks a lot. Bye.